All right, to watch this video for Monday, May 9th, I'm showing you the SPY first. You see we gapped down below the 50-day and ripped. I don't know if ripped is the right term, but certainly a nice green day. And we had support. We talked about it, 204 and the 50-day. So a little bit of increased volume over Thursday. So we'll see if this marks a short-term bottom or not. I am not making any kind of predictions. I just trade what the market gives me. And a quick reminder, or news flash, I guess, to anyone who's never seen my videos before. I do not hold overnight, so these stocks that I'm getting ready to talk about are all meant to maybe give me a setup to make some money tomorrow. I'll be back in cash before tomorrow night. Just back, I'll give you a quick example. Back in the day, especially when I had to work for a living full time and couldn't be in front of the screens all day, I used to try to find cheap stocks that could give me a big percentage move over the next week or two, right? So let me give you an example of what I used to do. Okay, I'm showing you PTX here, right? A cheap stock, right? It gapped up from $1 or a little below $1 to almost went to $1.50 on massive volume a few days ago, right? And so this is something that I might have looked at night and then put in a bid the next day, trying to, starting to load up here, right? Fill up my account, right? My whole account, maybe even a little margin, and think, hey, if this thing just runs to 2, I make a huge ton of money for not even really being in front of my screens, and then I can go on and look for the next one. And look what happens. So now it's been cut more than in half in 2 sessions. That's the kind of thing that I just got, I got tired of trying that, and so now that I've gotten to the point where I can be in front of the screens all day, I don't have to do any kind of desperate stuff like that. I don't say that in a bragging fashion. I just say, just to point out to people, no matter whether you can be in front of your screens or not, it is dangerous to put a huge chunk of money in something like this. I mean, yeah, the reward could be great, but look what can happen. So, and that's the kind of stuff I used to do because, it's very, very tempting. There's nobody telling you can't do it. So if you have the luxury to be in front of your screens all day, or even just a couple hours each morning, maybe even 1 or 2 days a week, a couple hours in the morning, you can still do very well and then not risk anything. Now, this is not me talking bad about swing trading, because there's a lot of money to be made by a good swing trader, right? You can have multi-day runs, and that's something I never get to reap the benefits of. So again, it's all about your personality. And of course, a seasoned swing trader would have never loaded up on something like that PTX. So keep that in mind as well. They would trade strong companies on pullbacks, right? So that's not a really fair example to use as a swing trader, but it's a good example of the stupid stuff I used to do. So all right, anyway, enough babbling. DeVry DV. A nice volume spike and a nice pop on Friday. So again, I don't like to chase, but I want to watch this for maybe a red to green, something like that on Monday. Again, I'm looking for stocks that might give me a nice trade on Monday. All right, so PRGN had this crazy move from literally 28 cents to 266 this day, and then the very next day gapped up and went to almost $4. All right, so now it's come in and it's really just going sideways. I'm not that interested in this unless it gets up maybe through $2. This one might get like a little mini short squeeze. If this thing gets through 2, I could see it going to 240, 260. Doesn't mean it has to, but you can make a nice amount. I mean, a 20-cent move on a $2 stock is 10%. So I'll be watching that one. Again, I'm not just going to jump in blindly. It'll depend on how the market's trading, whether or not the shippers look good, and so on. But this is kind of an interesting setup, just because of that short squeeze it had recently. SYNC, big gap up. Went all the way down to $3, but closed pretty strong on Thursday. Then Friday, kind of found equilibrium, opened, gap down, pushed down, back up, and ended up closing where it opened. But I think this is a good candidate for. They had really, really good news on Thursday, so I think it's a good candidate for a move higher. I'm just going to have it on watch. It's obviously when you get a huge gap like this, it's going to take a while for the moving averages to catch up. That doesn't mean it won't give a third-day rip, so it can. And again, having it on a chart might just give me that opportunity. Yelp, very nice gap up and closed really strong on Friday, so I'll be watching that one. I actually traded this one on Friday. Let me show you the setup here. This was 4 minutes in. These are 2-minute candles. It gapped up on earnings, and so you had a high and then a lower high. And I started telling everybody in the chat room, I really like this on a 2-minute buy setup because it might just rip through the highs and squeeze. Okay, the very next candle, it starts to push through lows of the day, and I became less interested in it, okay? Because now I thought a lot of times these gaps get filled, sellers, take over, and this thing would grind lower all day. What was interesting, though, is that it came right back up. It took out the lows of the day, came right back up and looked fairly strong. And look what the next candle did. Nice narrow 2-minute candle. I identified, I identified a big seller at 24.15, but volume was coming in, and I called this on a 2-minute buy setup over 24.15. Actually got filled at 24.15 myself, and then 2 minutes later, through the high of the day, and you can see what it did. This thing just ripped. I had a really nice trade in it, but it certainly left some money on the table, as I always do. As a day trader, you have to get used to the fact that you're never going to pull every dime out of every trade, unless you absolutely sell the top. And I've been doing this for well over a decade, and I think I've sold the top once. So keep that in mind. It's not your goal. Your goal is to take the meat out of the trade and be okay with the rest, right? So really nice close, and it is worth. By the way, that was on, if I go back to that 2-minute setup, the 24.16 idea. My stop was 23.99, so 17-cent risk. It doesn't get much better than that. It moved up well over $2 on that. But anyway, it goes back on watch for Monday because of a possible red to green, another maybe squeeze. Again, I don't want to become a chaser, especially on a stock that I had a nice trade in on Friday, right? I don't want to give it back on Monday. Limited Brands LB gap down on Thursday, and then it had another red day on Friday. I'm going to start watching this one for a snapback rally on Monday, only with a proper intraday setup. Under Armour. Now this one is interesting to me because it had nice support at 40 right here. I mean, it did a really nice job, and then bouncing off that 40 area, and then look where it falls from 48 to get down to 40. So now it's really interesting for a possible bounce off the $40 area. And next thing you know, a couple days lower still. So this is just, to me, it's not sitting at support or anything like that, but it's got potential for a snapback bounce, maybe a retest of 40. So I want to watch it. I want to watch it in that light too. So I think it's a worthwhile stock to have on watch. Big name, Under Armour, and really decimated. I mean, it's lost $10 in the last couple weeks. So that's one worth keeping an eye on. Weight Watchers, there's nothing really that interesting about this chart other than they had earnings, I don't know, Wednesday night, because this was Thursday, had the gap up, sold off, and then actually pierced 12 on Friday before bouncing somewhat. But this is a name that it's got decent support below. It did gap up above the 200-day and then close below it, and then still another day down. But this is one, if I show you an intraday from Friday, you see what it does. Sometimes people think news is coming, or maybe there was news, and you get these big high volume spikes. To me, that tells me shorts are a little bit nervous and pretty eager to cover on any little pop. So I think this is worth watching. WTW. Just for a bounce on Monday, I want to watch Zillow Z. This was on Bounce Watch for the chat room on Friday. I never got a trade in it. It didn't give me any kind of a setup because it gapped down and just kind of popped, and then nothing all day, right? Very tight channel. There's no trade there. And I saved myself a lot of money over the years by not trying to trade something that's not giving me, price and volume action. So, but I do try to focus, if you noticed on my videos, on stuff that has had recent high relative volume. So Zillow actually looks good to me if it can maybe take out Friday's high. Let's go back to 15-minute candles. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in a narrow range, but it doesn't have to do that to give me a trade, all right? Another thing it could do is just trade in a narrow range for the first hour or so and then take out the high of the day. That is a good candidate too for a bounce play. And when I say bounce play, I mean it's sold off for a couple days, but actually it's pretty strong if you look at where it was a few days ago because it had the gap up on earnings. So this one is a good potential for a long. Again, no trades in it on Friday, so it just goes back on watch. And then I put MOH on watch. This is another one that's just beaten up and maybe a little bit of a bottoming tail there. So some buyers finally coming in on Friday. No trades in it on Friday, but I think it's a good potential long for a snapback bounce on Monday. Also, in addition to this list, it's not a very long list, we'll be working together in the chat room to identify potential morning gap plays, kind of like Yelp on Friday. That's the kind of thing we look for, right? We look for sellers. We look for the gap plays. We look for sellers to come in and those sellers to fail. If I had to put it in a nutshell, that's how I play my morning gaps if they're going to be a good long entry. I want sellers to come in and those sellers to fail. That's exactly what happened in Yelp. So we'll build a list of those in the morning on Monday too, and we'll spend the day watching for other setups in individual names by watching our scanner. So I will leave it at that. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you Monday.